Welcome to the Wandering Tangent podcast. I'm BJ. With me is Jeff and Gary. Today we're going to talk about the 2020 sci-fi horror, I guess, underwater.
Yep.
So, Gary, this is a movie you have wanted to talk about for quite some time. You picked it quite a while ago. You just had the misfortune of having picked this movie right when me and Jeff actually had some plans in place, so we to get around to talking about it for a couple of months. So, why this movie, if I may ask?
So, in my opinion, this is a movie that not enough people have talked about. I feel like this is a good movie that was released at a very unfortunate time. So,
wasn't it a flop? Like
financially,
I heard that. Financially it was a flop, right?
Yes, okay. In the theaters
during
the pandemic. Now, some movies that was just a bad excuse, right? Because some movies actually weren't that good. But this is one of those that I think was genuinely pretty good. That was released at an unfortunate time because it was trying to fight against, nobody wanting to go to the movie theaters at that point.
Yeah. According to my stuff here, which aka the internet, it got released January 10th, 2020. So I guess it was right about when people started hearing about all that nonsense. We won't dig too deep into that, I don't think. In this regard.
This was one of the movies that was devoured by the COVID monster.
That
wreaked havoc on a lot of industries.
Yeah, I will say I watched the review of this movie on YouTube, and the guy who did the review brought up the interesting point that so this movie was originally filmed in 2017, I believe, and it may or may not have became a victim of kind of falling by the wayside when Disney bought Fox, because then it was like, well, what's Disney going to do with a sci-fi horror, right?
Yeah. so and that happened to a lot of things. Disney became the owner of a lot of things that it didn't know what to do with.
I bring up the whole Disney thing very, very carefully, as seems what happened during our conversation with Godzilla -1.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm better now, though, BJ. I've recovered.
You say that, Jeff.
It's all right.
My hand is hovering over the mute button.
Okay, but so this movie, this in my opinion is one of those little movies that could. Because recently it has been purchased by Netflix, and then a movie.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to say sorry to interrupt, but you said you saw it on Netflix. I just looked for a Netflix last night. I didn't see it. I had watched it on Hulu.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's not on Netflix, so I don't think Netflix owns it so much.
Let me see. I could have sworn there was. Okay.
Here we go, folks. Ready for some on-air research? Here we go.
Yeah, no. There was a underwater Netflix. It says it's on Netflix.
I mean, if you search for stuff online, it will say that, oh yeah, it's on Netflix, but it might be like in British Netflix or something.
Oh, it could be that. Be on Netflix. Because apparently it was on. Oh,
or maybe it had been at some point. Then
it says it says December 19th, 2023. It's on global Netflix, so maybe it's on Netflix for everywhere but the United States.
There you go. It's probably something like that.
Because right now it's number 6 on Netflix's global top 10. So everywhere.
Oh, because I was going to say we had briefly talked about it before, and he says, "Oh yeah, it's on Netflix." I'm like, "It is?" Because I looked for it, and I didn't see it on there.
No, it's just not on Netflix here in the United States. Apparently.
Okay, probably because of the whole Fox Disney thing, which we're not going to get into.
Could be, but
so Gary, you're saying why do you think this is a good movie? It flopped, but probably not for reasons that it should be blamed for.
Yes, I think this movie flopped, but not for reasons that it was that it can be blamed for. Obviously, people are now watching it because this article is dated December 19th, 2023. People are watching this movie now, 3 years later, and becoming very enamored by it. I don't know about you guys, because we'll get into that in a minute, whether you guys like it or not, but
without going into spoilers, I will say that I thought it was good. I didn't think it was, like, great or earth-shattering or anything. I don't know if it would have been like a runaway hit if it had come out at a more opportune time or anything like that.
I honestly have kind of the same opinion that I feel like it definitely would have made its money back. I don't know that it would have been a massive hit. You're right. But it definitely would have made its money back. It wouldn't have been a complete flop and an embarrassment, which is exactly what happened. So that's us two. Jeff, what do you think? Just non-spoilery review.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of movie you would want to see in the theater because it's a popcorn movie. It has suspense. It has jump scares at different times. It has a storyline which it is not as gripping as some stories, but as long as you can surrender yourself a little bit into the story, it can be all right. So it's a good film. I think that there's room for it to even be better, but all around, I think that the acting was pretty good. I know that some people, the audience now is just so different because some of the characters are a lot more modern characters and how they act, and that's fine. And I liked a lot of things. But I don't know how deep I want to. There's several characters I actually really liked, and it's kind of a survival story. So in that way, it's gripping enough. So I'd give it a good medium endorsement. Like it's all right. It's pretty good. It's worth a watch.
Okay. But this is one that I knew, so I kind of was pushing for this one. From what I understand, even though we're recording this on New Year's Eve, yes, we are recording something. We could be at parties, BJ, but we're recording. No, I know I pushed for this.
This is a party.
Yeah, this
is just partying. A party animal.
But with this, from what I understand, this is going to come out sometime around my birthday. And so my birthday wish is that at least someone goes and watches this movie other than us.
I mean, to be fair, we did have... The original plan was recorded on Christmas Eve, and then, as you might expect, that plan fell absolutely flat for various and sordid reasons.
Well...
Yeah.
I feel that's okay, especially since we'd recorded our emergency podcast just the week before, and we might have been a little bit tired from that one. So that's okay.
It took a lot of energy out of us. Okay, so let's get on to spoiling this film because I think there's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about.
Talking about the movie, and we said it about Godzilla -1, and I'm gonna say it about this one. Spoilers, like full spoiler warning in effect, because I actually kind of want people to go and see this one. So
I guess this is
at some point.
This is a fairly modern movie, so spoilers from here on out. Spoilers.
Yes.
Spoilers.
So
there's some people who may not yet understand.
Spoilers?
That they're spoilers.
Spoilers.
So
I'm just gonna say spoilers the rest of the episode.
One thing I will note, this isn't really a spoiler, but I was looking at this one, I was looking at the cast, and for some odd reason it shows more than 6 people on this cast, and I'm like, what the heck? What the heck, BJ? Did you see the more than 6 people in this movie?
I mean, there's the 2 guys at the end of the hallway at the very beginning that don't make it and they have to shut the door on, and then there's the dead
on there
body.
For like less than half a second.
But they are indeed on film.
Well, but
And
I
then
don't
there's the
see
dead
them
body.
on the cast list. I see something like Poseidon, Patty, and Godmother. Who are they? What? No.
I would assume Godmother is probably the AI voice
Oh,
or the
could be.
computer voice.
Could be.
Sort of a nod to Mother from Alien.
Could be.
Don't know who the heck Poseidon Patty is.
Poseidon
So-
Patty? Yeah.
It's. I was. So there's a video game. It's called Dead Space. You guys played this one or heard about it?
I played a little bit of Dead Space. I need to go back and finish it someday.
I was
I
getting
think-
big
okay.
Dead Space vibes off of this game, especially with that voice. More that than Alien. But anyways, maybe because
I'm
Dead
gonna
Space
say-
stole a lot from Alien.
Yeah, and as far as Poseidon Patty, just to go back, of course, but there are other voices in the film. There's a narrator who's giving you some sort of sales pitch.
That's Kirsten
Different
Stewart.
points.
I would think that's her.
No.
That's her voice.
No, Jeff's talking about like the like one of the recorded voices.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's a couple of different recorded voices, and it's probably one of them.
Like, welcome to such and such sensation. Your safety is very important to us. Stuff like that.
Oh yeah, stay together, work as a team. You'll be safe, and then everything happens. So
I mean,
Well-
to be fair, it's kind of hard to design your underwater drilling station to resist kaiju attacks.
now we're getting
Spoiler,
into real
I guess.
spoilers.
I mean, I did say
Well, wait a
I
minute,
did
wait a
chant
minute.
spoiler for about a minute there, so
Kaiju attacks, you're going to have to... I mean, this is not a kaiju monster. You're just...
Jeff,
Jeff, did you not see the end of the movie?
No. Like, what's going on?
you didn't see the end of the movie?
Jeff, did you
I
not
saw
see
the end of the movie.
Did you
It's
not
like-
see the giant monster at the end of the movie?
I did see it. Is that a kaiju?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
the point? Okay. I don't know. What constitutes a kaiju?
Kaiju is basically Japanese for giant monster.
Now,
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So,
ergo-
this was
so
a
it's
Japanese
just a handed-
monster, right?
no, this was not a Japanese.
It doesn't have to be
monster.
Japanese to be a kaiju. It's kind of a catch-all term for a large
Now,
animal, a
Large-
naturally
large
large fauna,
monster.
shall we say?
large monster is that's in the
Oh yeah, kaiju is just a catch-all term.
Now, alternatively, BJ, in defense of Jeff, Jeff could be saying that instead of saying this is a generic kaiju, he could have been saying that no, this was actually Cthulhu, because it kind of looks like that, right?
The only tie I've seen like officially to Cthulhu in this whole thing is that whoever designed Monster said it was based off Cthulhu, because I went into this blind as possible, but I had to look it up to make sure I was seeing the right movie or watch. Like people were like, "Oh, it's Lovecraftian." I'm like, okay, I
So,
enjoy some Lovecraft literature.
Let's
but-
explain Cthulhu to anyone who is listening that does not know Cthulhu.
well, to get to the point I was going to say is that I don't think this movie is like actually Lovecraftian, because Lovecraftian tends to imply sort of more psychological horror or like horror of the unknown or the unknowable. This is just like a giant monster, but it's underwater, so it's Cthulhu. Ah,
Well,
in my opinion, at least.
but so we've got a giant monster and it's underwater, and the people were digging for some sort of resource, and they dug too deep.
So it's a Balrog.
Yes, we could say it's a Balrog as well, an underwater Balrog.
This is the sequel of The Lord of the Rings. It's about as tied to that as it is to Lovecraft, in my opinion. So, anyway.
Pretty good
What's a
assessment.
Balrog?
A
You guys are
Balrog?
keep coming up with things.
Lord of the Rings,
Balrog.
Jeff. It's
That's Lord of the Rings?
yes.
I've seen Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's the big fire demon in Moria. That's a Balrog.
Oh, yeah. Balrog. Okay.
Yeah. So
Don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but
and just to explain Cthulhu, because I don't know if we explained Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a giant monster that lives underneath the sea and sleeps And we're just very happy that it doesn't wake up. Because if it were ever to wake up, it would eat the world. At least according to Lovecraftian lore.
Yeah, well.
Yes, which are books from the 1920s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So we're introduced in this movie to the character of Nora, played by Kirsten Stewart. She of the Twilight fame. And she's just kind of chilling there at the bottom of the ocean, you know, as chill as you can be.
Just another day at work.
In a
she's just
flimsy tin
in the locker
can
room
at the bottom of the ocean where everything's going to crush you to death in just a second, right?
Yeah, it kind of starts off showing her in just a tiring routine of a day, and you don't know her backstory, but it gives you kind of a sense that there's backstory there. She's not particularly happy. She's just there at a job. She's all alone, just trying to put her socks and shoes on. That's the beginning of everything.
And then
it's a very simple start.
And then everything goes skiwampus because the station starts to collapse, right? She notices a leak, and then that's like, oh, that's a bad thing. Because, you know, they're underwater, and if things start leaking, they don't stop leaking.
Yeah, I will say that, like, things kicked off abruptly enough. I'm like, oh, wait, is this like a dream sequence or something? Because we're destroying the place, and the only background information we've gotten so far was during the credits.
Yeah.
There was, like, some background info, like, in the form of, like, newspaper headlines in the credits. And then all of a sudden things go sideways immediately.
And then, so she manages to save herself, and then Mr. Let's get the name right, Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Spoilers are in, so I'm just going to call him Soon Gonna Die.
Soon Gonna Die. The first person she meets.
Yes. Yeah. She meets this dude, right? And then they close the door. There's like two other dudes rushing up to get into the safe area, but they can't quite get there, so they have to seal the door. Otherwise, the entire thing's going to go. They have to, cut things off where they can, right?
Well, to be fair, I think the guys get got before they close the door.
Yeah, they're pretty much...
You can't see them.
Yeah, that they were too far away. They weren't going to make it, and so they, even though...
And it's a scene designed for suspense.
Yeah.
You're supposed to get your blood pumping at this point. The characters are nearly going to die. And yeah.
So
they have this last minute difficult decision to try and save themselves.
And it's kind of mentioned
the door. Yeah.
And it's kind of mentioned before, this movie has a rather small cast. There's 5 characters, 6 characters?
6 characters. 6 characters that you see on screen throughout the entire movie.
It's a great movie to make with a budget because you don't have very many people.
But the next character we get in, fan favorite, T.J. Miller plays Paul. At least my wife really likes this character.
I would say fan favorite for some, I guess. He's sort of quasi-comedy relief, kinda, sorta.
I like it. I like some of his jokes. They really are spot on. There's a point later in the movie where they have to go out and do some investigations outside in the water, and he nudges this another character they pick up along the way, and he says, hey lady, it's your time to shine. And then she's like, freaks out. She's like, what? And he's like, no, I'm just messing with you. And then he gets up and goes to put on his diving suit and go outside. Kind of like one of those like just poking fun of some things. I just thought that was kind of funny that he's just he can make that kind of dark humor in a moment like that. But
yeah, the character you're talking about is Emily, who is, what did they say she is, a research assistant?
Yeah, she's kind of
she's very much out of her depth, no pun intended.
Yeah, she's
not one of the actual workers on the station.
Yeah, she's
per se. Like everyone else is trained in the facility and probably has experience working there, but she's in a different situation.
Well,
she's along as or like, yeah, go ahead.
She'd probably be one of those who's studying either the material that they're pulling up to try to better resource it, or else she's a person who's trying to study what's happening down at those depths. Because
do they ever? Sorry,
because
I'm just gonna ask you. Go ahead.
No one's ever down that deep unless they've got a reason, and it's some universities would pay a lot of money to have people down that far just to be able to look at the flora and fauna and whatever else is down there. So that there could be that as well. So there's a lot of reasons why she would be down there, not necessarily in association with the company.
Sorry, I swear I didn't keep interrupting you on purpose. But,
no, it's all right. It's all right.
Did they ever specify what they were extracting, mining, drilling for?
No, just some material that's worth putting a multi-billion-dollar station on the bottom of the ocean, and not just one multi-billion-dollar station. Remember, BJ, this is the second one. And as soon as the second one crushes and dies, they've already got the funding to go for round 3.
Well, again, that's sort of a post-credit scene, which they could have just slapped in at the end, because this doesn't really. Because a lot of the information they give in like the opening credit and the post-credit don't really affect the story.
Yeah, but
it's not like Alien, where the corporation knew there was a giant monster down here all along, and the corporation's evil. That was just kind of added in that.
I'm sure the corporation doesn't.
The credit sequence.
The corporation doesn't know or care about giant monster. They just care about getting resource out, and whatever they can do to get resource out, that's fine by them. So we've talked about pretty much 4 characters. 4 characters at this point. There's 2 more that we can talk about. One is Liam. He's kind of along with Emily. Kind of.
I think they usually refer to him as Smith.
Yeah, he's the one who's kind of along with Emily, kind of in the control area, and then they run into Lucian. I always refer to him as Captain, because I think that's what Nora refers to him as kind of a.
I was gonna say Cap.
Yeah, they always refer to him as Cap or Captain, because he's kind of the one in charge.
Oh, I think he is, in fact, the captain.
Yeah. And he's kind of a secondary father figure to Nora, or at least he acts that way, and she kind of treats him that way as well. There's more to that particular story when we get to it.
We don't have background for these characters, so we kind of suppose it. But
no, we do.
We do know that they know each other.
Pick it up.
When they meet, she knows the captain.
They're
familiar with each other.
They all more or less know each other, right?
Yeah, they all know each other, because it's...
Well, the weird thing is that when you look at the underwater station, there's room for a lot of people. There's all these places where people are quartered. There's a very large a washing area, a big, huge locker room area. So you almost think there could be hundreds of people down here working under the ocean, but you don't really see them. And I suppose that a lot of it could be that it's night, everyone is asleep when this catastrophe happens.
It does sort of, when the station first starts to collapse, Nora is running down the hallway, she's pounding on doors, wake up, leak.
Yeah, so there must have been people in all those rooms that were just off their shift and resting.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, she's on a different shift or whatever it might be.
She's waking up early.
She's just up late.
Time.
She's stayed up late, something. She's off shift, doing maintenance. I don't know. She does imply that she's more of a maintenance type than working on the drilling rig type. So there's that. Yeah, it is a very large place. Probably room for dozens, if not 100 or so people. So it's kind of interesting in that way. And there is implied story. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, right? Nora is recently her fiance died, and so she's kind of dealing with that particular trauma.
Yeah, they don't really give like a timeline on it or anything like that.
They don't quite reveal it until it's much later on, too.
Yeah, it's
so you know she's upset about something, but you don't know until much later when she mentions it.
And you also pick up more story on Lucian about how he had a daughter. That everybody thinks that he has a daughter, but it turns out he had a daughter who's about the same age as Nora. So,
or I guess if she had lived, she would be the same age.
Yeah. If she had lived, she would have been the same age. So that's why he kind of views Nora as kind of almost a daughter, and why he is so intent on trying to save her. And so it's kind of...
To be fair, he's pretty intent on saving everybody.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's implied by the first time we see him, yeah. Captain has already sent off at least one group of people off in savior pods. And he, instead of trying to save himself, instead of getting in there, he's like, no, Captain goes down with the ship. Or...
Savior pods?
I don't...
Gary, you've been reading too much 40K, I think.
Well, that's what they call it, isn't it? Like little life pods?
I was going to say, I think most things referred to them as life pods. I think in this movie they just kind of referred to them as pods, but yeah, that's neither here nor there.
Anyways, so...
It's the idea across either way.
Get to the surface pods. At least that's the hope. And then, well, they try to make their way, and then they find something. Something is down there in the water with them, EJ.
Well, you're telling me I watched the movie?
Something is in the water, and I gotta say, like, the thing that probably I didn't like as much about this movie is the creatures they run into. And, you know, I think Cthulhu was a fascinating creature when he was written about, but still, the monsters to me seem very generic monsters. There's nothing unique about them. They're just a bunch of brown monsters under the ocean. What I would say, though, that fascinates me, though, about them is the fact that they had arms. You know, creatures under the ocean don't really have arms. And they don't know where these things came from, but they theorize that they were drilling or mining through the ocean floor, and they somehow broke into a chamber below, whether that chamber was water or something else, I don't know, but there was some sort of underground well of some kind.
Yeah, I forget exactly what they call it, but yeah, their theory is that they had some sort of chamber or cave, yeah.
And there were creatures that had somehow evolved in that chamber, and because of that, they were separate from the ecosystem above, and so they evolved in a completely different way. And so, interestingly enough, these creatures, they look almost human-like in that they have a head, a giant mouth. I mean, they're not human, but they have these arms and fingers that both could be used for swimming, but even can grab things. And there's this idea that if you had life growing on two separate planets, would life grow in a completely opposite way of each other on these two planets? Or if you had a life evolving on these two planets, would they actually share similar characteristics? This is like a big discussion that nobody really has a good answer to.
I think convergent evolution is the theory you're talking about, and that I've heard this one, and it's actually a pretty good theory.
I know. A lot of people, they go ahead.
I was just to say, kind of again, back to people calling this Lovecraftian, and me not necessarily agreeing with that. Lovecraft monsters are described as being indescribable or whatever, right? And that's part of the reason why it's hard to make a good Lovecraft movie, because how do you film something that's indescribable, or, you know, film impossible geometries and all that, right? You can't actually make something with impossible geometries because that's impossible. Ergo. So.
Yeah, his stories were designed for the page, not for the screen. You would need something really wild to really portray that, and who knows if you'll ever do it justice.
But so
I I think the monsters were good enough.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
I mean, yeah.
Bottom of the ocean monster. You've got people who are living in a spot that people aren't meant to live on, right? So it's bottom of the ocean. It takes these massive, powerful suits, and it shows what happens when those suits fail, right? Because the suits implode rather forcefully, almost explode.
Well, implosion is quite a forceful thing.
Yeah, but
under that ocean depth. I mean,
I think when you're that deep, you don't really implode so slowly, which you know they show.
Yeah, so they show a very forceful implosion multiple times when people when their suits are compromised, right? And then and so they're not meant to be down there. Every habitat they've got is barely functional because it's putting so much effort into just sustaining their life, right? And then
okay, so in the original Star Trek, sorry to interrupt, but there's a character in the original Star Trek. I think his name is Bailey, but he goes in this wild rant on a particular episode. He says if humans were meant to fly, they would have been born with wings. It's something like that. But they often say it in this show too. There's in some sci-fi shows, they'll have somebody who says, we're doing what we're not supposed to do. We're going places that we weren't meant to go. Because if we were meant to be here, there would be a reason for it. We're going too far. And they do it in Star Trek, where it's like, we're going into deep space. We don't belong here. And in this show, they do the same thing several times. They're saying, we're going into the depths of the ocean where we don't belong. We're mining. We're carving out of rock that we don't belong in. It's kind of a reoccurring theme, like you are trespassing into nature's domain and nature will come after you.
I was going to say it's usually some nature-y thing, some Avatar or Fern Gully thing. So in this case, I will say it was done more by the character who was having a nervous breakdown because she thought they were all going to die. So
yeah, that's kind of one of those things that you're right. They go into that in this movie that they're not meant to be there and they're suffering the consequence. But they
sort of talk about it. I don't think they don't really like delve into it.
But they do go into this kind of is interesting in that they explore how much just resilience comes into play, because we're left at the end with basically only 2.5 characters as they're trying to survive, the 2 ladies, because all the dudes have either died or the one is unconscious. And they're just dragging themselves, just trying to walk from point A to point B is so hard, and then they've got creatures attacking them at the same time, so it's kind of interesting that way.
Yeah, there's I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, well, no, you can go ahead. Mine's kind of a big, huge thing.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say that there's sort of a point pretty early in the movie when the cast all gets together and all the life pods on their part of the station is gone, and so the captain comes up with this plan. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go down this little elevator, we're going to get in suits, we're going to walk across this, and we're going to go to the drill site, and we'll have a way out the drill site. And the Emily character, who is, again, very much out of her depth, is kind of freaking out because no one's ever done this before, blah, blah, blah. And we're all going to die. And the captain's like, okay, yeah, there's a chance we may die, but please accept the fact if we do this, there's a chance we may live.
Yeah. Well, that's the point of the captain. He's got to turn people's direction. He's got to say, no, this is the right way. And he's got to be convincing. I think he shows how to be a good captain.
Oh yeah, he
like marshal people together.
Yeah, he
focus them on a goal.
Yeah, he did a good job, because it was something along the lines of, if we stay here and do nothing, we will die. If we do this, we might die. And there's a book series really like the Dresden Files, where sort of the main character, that's that's sort of his motto in a lot of situations, is that the probability of death is better than the guarantee of death.
Yeah. Yep.
And
But he's got to. Yep.
And that's why they do this
Gotta
crazy
convince
plan
everyone.
of walking a mile across the bottom of the ocean in monster-infested territory.
Well, to be fair, when they made the plan, they didn't know there was monsters. They just thought it was the earthquake.
You know, I think the captain knew. For some odd reason, I get the impression
say
the
that?
captain knew what was happening.
I didn't get that read.
Because he'd been down there during the previous site's disaster. So...
Well, they don't
or at
really
least
say
it's
why the
implied.
shepherd station got abandoned. They just said it was abandoned, and it's obviously intact because Nora ends up there, and it's intact enough for her to go in, and there's air and all that, and there's still equipment there, enough equipment
Yeah.
she can change suits or whatever.
Yeah. And suits
So-
and
So I don't know if there was like any sort of disaster beforehand, or if they just abandoned the first station because the drill and the new station were built.
could be. So...
Well, I go ahead, Gary.
No, but I get that. At least there was a weird map in the old one, and maybe he kind of understood. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking more into this than I should.
Well, again, I've only seen the movie once, but the only thing I really remember out the map is that it was like, here's us, here's the new location and the dig site. I didn't get any read at all that the captain knew there were like the monsters down there or whatever, but I could be wrong. I've only seen the movie once, and you have seen the movie more than once.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe it's one of those that you one of those tiny context clues. I don't. Directors sometimes do that, where they put tiny infinitesimal clues in their little subtleties, and most audiences don't want to go into a movie looking for tiny subtleties. They just want to go into looking for something, especially when it concerns major plot points. Most audiences just want everything fairly well spelled out, pretty big visual cues, practically a neon sign pointing to something saying, look at here, look at this is what explains everything.
but if you want a really sophisticated movie, you might throw in some things that are hard to see. That way your real loyal fan base can discover them over time and then get real excited about it.
Yeah.
If you can manage it.
I'm not sure this
yeah.
movie was meant to be that sophisticated.
Yeah, possibly. I wanted to talk about the monsters yet again because I
Okay.
have more questions. I want to see what you guys have to say about that. So we have these creatures that evolved a few different human-like traits in that they have arms and stuff. But another weird thing is you have the giant mega creature, but then it has all these swirling little tiny creatures around it. So the question being, what are these? Is this a giant, almost like hive structure where you have a queen and then drones? Are they a community of creatures? Are they just like a giant flock of vultures in a sense, where they're just kind of like of the same species and they're not really together? They're actually competing against each other, but they don't fight each other. They just swarm around and look for resources. It's kind of hard because these creatures, like, they were in a different habitat and they've been unleashed into the ocean. So they're in a completely different place now. But what is the structure of this monster kingdom or whatever it is?
I mean, it's going to be almost all conjecture because they don't really like dwell on the monsters outside of, oh, hey, there's monsters out there. So like,
Yeah, they're just trying to get away from them.
yeah.
I think the monsters lure people down with promises of riches and then eat the people. And that's their entire life cycle, is they just lure people down with the promises of riches. They're like sirens. They're saying, ooh, sea people, come down here and get the rich stuff, and then they just eat them. And that's why there's so many monsters. Is so many people have gone down there, right?
Well, I think the sirens had a better location than the creatures at like the bottom of the Mariner's Trench or near the Mariner's Trench or whatever.
Yeah.
Sort of a one trick pony. Hey, I mean, I know you're kidding, but still.
Well, okay, there was a moment when I was watching this at the very beginning and I saw the first creature and I thought, oh, this is a mermaid movie. There was a moment where I thought, they're like monster mermaids, right?
They're like,
because they looked kind of humanish, and this is
really ugly, very dangerous mermaids. Yes, Jeff,
I mean,
you've got it.
Again, to be fair, since I did have Lovecraft in my head, I'm like, oh look, it's Deep Ones.
It could be that too. It's got the weird tentacly face.
Okay, what is a deep one? What are you talking about?
A deep one is a Lovecraftian creature. It's a without going too deep into it, is a mermaid or merperson-like creature that will make deals with coastal towns or coastal communities, and they will often how to phrase this well, staying family friendly. They will often trade.
Are we family friendly? I don't even know.
I mean, mostly.
So they'll trade.
We kind of bounce around between.
They will
ruling
trade for special
things.
Services, right, BJ? Special services.
The deep ones will trade sometimes gold. Sometimes they will get fish to come to a certain area if the community specializes in the harvesting of sea life. And in return, they often ask for
services.
Shall we say hybrids?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But they look human.
So,
they like
yes,
they're that's how they negotiate with people.
Yeah, in the book, namely the Shadow over Innsmouth, the half human, half deep run hybrids will appear human until later in life, and then they develop what is known in the book as the Innsmouth look, while they start to look like fish, or start to look more unhuman or whatever. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
these aren't really deep ones. That was just
well
a joke
either.
that came to mind. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Speaking of BJ, there's a little game I like to play every now and again. It's called Warhammer. There's a species in there. It's called Gene Stealers. Very similar to this in concept. I picked up.
I see you're not using the mute button right now, are you, BJ?
Well, for one thing, he's not going on a rant for the 15th time about a certain subject.
Well, so I'm just saying, because this is kind of small and relevant, and then I'll get back to the main topic, is that the Gene Stealers...
Plus, there's everyone else hitting the mute button, because usually we start talking Warhammer, it was like, oh, there they go again.
But
it's like us when we talk about D&D.
But I got a box of those Gene Stealers for Christmas, and they've got a new thing with them where all of them can have the weird tentacly face. And I built that box that way.
So
the entire squad can have the weird tentacly face, and they can all look like these sea creatures in essence.
I could be remembering wrong.
Like the Flying Dutchman, right? From
Pirates of
the Caribbean with his tentacle mustache.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Tentacle beard.
I could be remembering wrong, but the smaller the shall we say the more human-sized creatures, they didn't really have tentacle-y face, did they? They just had like big mouths.
These look like little tiny tadpoles.
No, I thought they had tentacly faces. No,
I could be remembering wrong, because there was a couple times where
it showed a baby one.
Yeah, they show a baby one, and there's a couple of times that they like try to straight up eat, try to like bite Nora's head off, and they have more like jaws than tentacles in that situation. I think it's more maybe just the big one has tentacles, but I could be wrong. I've seen this movie once. It was a week or two ago, and it was right during Christmas, so I was quite tired. So that worked pretty well.
You know, there are some, this is me, I have endless theories about everything, but there are some species that will cooperate at first, and then as their food sources run out, they begin to become more savage, even cannibalistic. So it could be that these creatures, they just spawn so many of their numbers, but then there's one of them that will dominate the others and will just eat them and grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And that could be what this giant Cthulhu-looking like creature is. It's just the biggest fish in the pond, in a sense.
And underwater, especially deep underwater, can support larger forms of life. Not that that life can move. It's like why we get whales and giant squid, right?
As long as there's a food source.
Yeah, as long as there's a food source, they can the deep underwater can support the giant creatures. Those creatures can't survive on the surface or on land, but they can survive underwater. Yeah, so
Well,
it's
I'm not a scientist, but I don't know.
There are some really great, huge sauropods in the fossil record that survived on land. At least people believe they probably did, unless they live partly in water or something. But
I don't know if creatures quite that big could quite survive as deep underwaters are in the movie, but they're not really there to talk about the biology of the monsters. Just, oh crap, there's monsters.
actually when they talk about in the Call of Cthulhu in the actual book, I think they refer to Cthulhu himself as being rather gelatinous in form. That might be because of his non-physical nature, that maybe he's just made of a spiritual gel of some sort.
Well, it's hard to say because Cthulhu does have enough of a form that he like chases the boat out to sea and he like kills people and there's like idols of him and whatnot. But
Yeah.
so he chases boats down,
Well,
right?
are we gonna turn this into like a H.P. Lovecraft thing?
I don't know if this might be a tangent we're stuck on, but
So-
here's the thing, like, if a monster's scary, there needs to be a reason why it's proven to be scary. And if there's not a reason, then its terror factor is really more theoretical. It's just that we don't know what it is, but we sure don't want to play with it because it's very scary.
I would genuinely say that this monster is scary because it's got muscles strong enough when it hits the station, it feels like an entire earthquake, and he can crush this thing. And the station looks, as much as I say it's a tin can, it's actually probably built fairly resilient, right?
It's got concrete and other things.
Concrete and steel.
Yeah.
It's fairly solidly built, and this thing just crushes it like it's nothing. So
Like it does take a while for each level of the station to collapse. So it's not like it just goes kaboom, even though it does when I guess it goes nuclear. But that's because it goes nuclear, not because it implodes. Because of course stuff goes nuclear.
Well, no, it explains why it goes nuclear, because the thing's got a whole bunch of kinetic energy. It's not really nuclear. It's just it's got a whole bunch of kinetic energy that's not going anywhere, and they haven't turned it down. They didn't take the time to turn it off safely, and so yeah. So why that exists in a modern set, I don't know exactly how this drill works. That's kind of weird. There's a lot of hand-wavy science fiction-y stuff that's going on. That's why it's called a science fiction thriller, not a...
It is a near future thing, and it is
a near future science fiction thriller.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you run the danger if you come up with too many details, you might eventually say something silly that the audience won't buy. So you want to be a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah, it is not meant to be hard sci-fi. You know, they're not out there explaining, oh well, here's how these suits can like not just implode and bomb the ocean, blah blah blah. You know, they do enough to establish believability and roll from there, which is good. You know,
yeah, it's good.
Not everything needs to
enough there to make it understand that there's something going on, but they don't explain everything. So, leave us to fill in the gaps.
You don't need to be like George R.R. Martin and whine about the fact that Aragorn doesn't explain his tax policy, right?
His tax policy.
Oh gosh. Tax policies in the
because then
far future, or in a science or in a fantasy setting. Gosh, how does
okay, you might have to explain this to me. I'm not following.
Okay, so George R.R. Martin is the quote unquote I should say quote unquote author of the Song of Ice and Fire series, better known as Game of Thrones, but he famously had a critique about the Lord of the Rings trilogy of books, saying something along the lines of, "Oh well, I didn't really like where at the end it just says that Aragorn like ruled wisely. Like, what was Aragorn's tax policy? Did Aragorn launch genocide against the orcs? Blah 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 blah." And like on the surface, okay, like fine, whatever. But when you look deeper into it and consider the fact that this guy hasn't, say, when was the last Song of Ice and Fire book published? Has it been more than a decade at this point?
Could be. I think he's just he cashed in with the TV series and then hasn't really ever needed to write anything else ever since then. So he hasn't.
So yeah, well, the other way you could look at it is that if you get worried about tax policies and all these small little minor things that don't really affect the story, you start worrying about that rather than, say, the story, and you get overwhelmed. Then you never finish your story.
Yeah.
It seems like there's just a different mentality between Tolkien and this author as far as like how they look at things and the depths of details. Because I know that Game of Thrones is like a heavily detail-oriented story where you're not focusing on just the heroic struggles of a group of characters. Instead, it's the intricacies of collapsing and growing societies.
Well, you would ask half Gary about that. I read the first book. I'm like, well, the one character I like died, so I guess I don't have to read the rest of them.
And I read the books a long time ago. It's one of those series I read it once, and then I put it down, and I said, that's good. I'm good with that. And then I never picked it back up again. So I actually have lost a whole bunch of the details by now.
Okay, so there you go. There's our review of the Song of Ice and Fire. I read one book, and Gary's like, I read one, so it was okay. And Jeff's like, what?
Well, there's some series, especially epic fantasy series, where the books are big and thick and heavy. It's like the Wheel of Time series. I read that series one time, and I decided I never wanted to read that series ever again, and so I haven't.
I've tried Wheel of Time a few times. I kept bouncing off around book 8.
Yeah,
because I really wanted to get to the books that Brandon Sanderson wrote after Robert Jordan died, but I couldn't get past the hump.
Yeah, that's a tricky series to get past because it's so.
Of course, we talk about giant thick books. I bring up Sanderson. I'm sitting here looking at my hardcover of The Words of Radiance. It's like 3 inches across.
Well, but here's the difference between Sanderson and Jordan, right? There's a reason why you want to get to Sanderson's books, because Sanderson fills his with fun details that are interesting, right? The entire book wanders into so many different areas, and you are so entertained the entire time. Versus Jordan, a lot of it feels like he's writing to be able to, sell his books by the pound, as opposed to, filling it with interesting story elements, right?
Sell his books by the pound.
Yeah.
How you doing, Jeff?
He's paid by the page and not by how well his story was told.
I'm gonna fold my arms and tug at my ponytail. Do something snarky. I think you might be the
Everyone
only person
listening
that
now
gets that reference.
thinks you have a ponytail.
No, I don't. It's a Wheel of Time joke. But anyway, how you doing, Jeff?
Just laughing. That's it. That's all I'm doing.
Jeff's over there like,
I know some things.
They're talking
I know a
about
few
epic
things.
fantasy. They're talking about 40K.
So let's get back to this awesome movie that we all watched here in a while back, right? So there's some people that make it's interesting when we start to see characters dying, right? And how everybody reacts. And it's interesting because sometimes I appreciate the fact that this movie has such a small cast. So when every single person dies in this, you actually feel you've actually known this person for a significant period of time, and you're like, oh my goodness, this person just died. And you feel the impact of that person's death.
Well,
I'm gonna say
except
maybe
for Rodrigo.
Yeah, Rodrigo,
Yeah.
you kind of only get like a second's worth of a few minutes worth of introduction to him, and then he dies. But everyone subsequent to that, you're like, oh my, I'm actually kind of attached to this character. No, don't kill that character. I like him.
Yeah, poor Rodrigo's there to sort of set the stakes for like the suits and stuff. Like, oh, suits compromised.
Yeah. And you can tell when he's picking up the helmets and he sees, like, he's got two helmets and he gives Nora the good one. You can tell he's like, oh, I know I'm not going to make it. This isn't going to work. And then she sees that crack starting to spread and she's like, no, we need to stop now. No. And then, of course, the full water gets in and Rodrigo dies. Boom! He's dead. And I think you see his teeth at some point, maybe, which is very gruesome.
There's part of a mandible. But anyway, Jeff, you're going to say something?
This is speaking of family friendly.
Family friendly, yes, Jeff. Save us.
So,
make this friendly family. Go.
Yeah, so I actually am kind of in the middle of the road there. I think they do some really good things to help the audience feel something about the characters. They do some things, but I don't think it's as extensive as some other shows may have done. So when they get killed, I think it's not that they do nothing, but I don't think this show really is so much about getting people to feel for the characters, because they bring you into the middle of these characters. They don't show you the backstory. They have dialogue with each other where they're glad to see each other, and they're glad that they're alive, which means it tells you that they know each other and that they have backstory, but they're not going to go into it. And that will probably be a quick way of introducing characters. If you had a TV series where you can go into long backstories behind a character, you might be able to get the audience to feel something for them, and then they die, and then it's dramatic. So I think there's some of it, but it's not as extensive for me. Like, I didn't somehow become greatly attached to these characters, and there's a lot of things they don't explain, like the bunny rabbit that the character is attached to. They never really fully explain that, as far as I know.
I just thought that was
the significance of it.
I just thought that was a funny quirk of Paul. Like, he's like, he really likes this bunny rabbit, so he's always got to keep it with him. And then, I don't know.
It is a fairly go ahead.
It does make it to the surface. Like, he hands it off to the
bunny survives the story.
No, she hands it off to the one guy right before he gets in the pod, and then she says, give it to his parents or something so that they can remember him.
It is a fairly compact plot. It's not a terribly long movie. It's like 90 minutes. One common complaint I saw about it was people saying there was a lot of character development, but then again,
it's not a 2-hour movie or a 3-hour movie.
It's not really meant to be a character piece,
Yeah, they do a little bit to show you that the characters are connected and feel something. And so there's a little bit of drama when you lose them.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why I like it. Maybe that's one of the reasons I like it, is that I feel like it doesn't overstay its welcome.
I mean, yeah, it's, I guess the compare and contrast is to say Godzilla minus one, where a good chunk of that movie is just you like getting to know the characters, seeing their struggles, and you get attached to them. In this movie, there's a couple moments of levity where they talk back and forth, but it's mostly uh, go, 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 we're on a timetable. If we don't get here by X time, we're dead, blah, blah, blah. So
I think
it's not meant to be a character piece. It is a more of a horror action movie, I guess.
I think the audience probably disagrees with me. I'm kind of weird, but I probably would have been happier even if there were no monsters in this whole movie. If it was really just about an earthquake and a group of futuristic deep sea miners who are just trying to survive. I would have been happy with that, especially if you make it more about how the character has lost everything in her life, but she still perseveres and she sacrifices herself to save someone else in the end, and the captain. I would have been fine with all of that. Now, I know you guys, we all love monster movies. You guys very much love monster movies. So the fact that there was a Cthulhu-like creature in it meant that there was a bonus. You had a kaiju-like monster in it. I get that too. I think there's several different ways this movie could have been made, and it could have been a good movie. But this one needed a monster because it wanted to be a popcorn movie. Wanted to have a good blockbuster-like quality to it, where you go to the movies and they have loud jump scares and shrieking sounds, and the characters go on and on and on, and things get worse and worse and more impossible for them to survive. And yeah, and you're in a dark area with a little limited visibility with your tiny flashlight, and you know that there's a creature coming. So it has all that suspense in it, but I would have been fine with many different things. I think I'm just boring now. The audience wants big monsters. I'm fine with realistic disaster movie. Yeah.
I mean, we can't make a movie that pleases everybody, right?
Yeah.
That has yet to been done. A movie that pleases everybody. Yeah.
I did like the so I do like that idea in there that you put that the giant monster was to make us happy. I honestly would have thought that a giant monster, maybe a giant robot. I'm still of the standing opinion that any movie could be made better if they add a giant robot. So if you added a giant robot to this one to fight the giant monster, would have made things even better. But
I mean, I will admit, towards the end of the movie, I was kind of expecting Nora to sacrifice herself, but I kind of thought, since they made a big deal of, we made it a drilling station, I thought she was gonna like somehow use the drill on the giant monster, but instead she just has the energy plant meltdown. But
no,
works too.
Isn't the drill itself what happened? Because it's moving, and she makes it overload, and that's what explodes. I thought it was that. It's not the energy source of it. It's the drill itself. It's the kinetic energy of that.
No, I thought it was the energy source, because that was basically the same thing that happened at that happened at Kepler, the first station, except that she caused it manually.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there, really.
Regardless,
not super important to the plot.
Giant boom happens, and that's what kills. Kills giant monster.
Kills giant monster. Kills smaller monster, which lets her
friends escape.
Which allows her friends to escape, and of course the two that escape are the two that are in love, and so she sacrifices herself because one, Smith, is just kind of an old friend of hers. It turns out.
Mm-hmm.
He knew both her and her fiance.
Yeah. I get the impression that her, Smith, and Paul are all kind of like old friends, along with Lucian, so that all of them have known each other for a while. So the only two real outsiders of this in this particular movie are Rodrigo and girl
Emily.
Emily. And then Emily was on her way to being on the inside of the group because she knew Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mixture of people who are somewhat strangers to each other or people that have known each other for a very long time
Yeah.
because they're probably connected to this industry. They've been on different projects together, a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and they have personal lives connected as well. But as well, here's the thing: like, is it necessary for disaster or survival movies to also have a giant monster in them?
Not
Because
necessary, but
No, you're right,
it
Jeff.
often happens.
The monster could have been taken out of this movie and it would have still just been as dramatic, right? She could have still sacrificed herself for whatever reason. Maybe she has to go and shut down the drill or whatever, and then the only two people that make it out are the young couple and whatever.
I mean,
But
go ahead.
but it wouldn't essentially have changed the movie, but it is kind of nice to have a giant monster.
Okay, there's another movie. I think it's called The Terror, but it's about an expedition, a real expedition in history, in an attempt in the 1800s to find a northern passage through the Arctic.
I thought that was a miniseries, not a movie.
I have no idea what you're talking about, so I'll let you guys find out.
Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a film.
Oh.
And in this the real expedition, the real history, they went into the Arctic, they got frozen out. None of them survived. That's the real part of history. And nobody knows exactly what happened to them, but they have some recovered letters that they managed to save away in like almost like a pile of rocks they were using to save letters back to the headquarters in England where was being managed. But when they made this movie about it, but then
No, it's a
they
TV
just felt
series,
like
Jeff.
it wasn't enough with the real story. So they added in giant, like, mutant polar bears into the story
No.
to add extra suspense. And I almost think, like, this movie is different. Underwater's fine. The whole thing was a made-up story. But The Terror was a little bit silly because you take this real piece of history and you add in monsters because, of course, the audience needs monsters. And, yeah.
Well, I mean, if maybe it's
Okay,
just me. But
maybe we need monsters.
Well,
We need
Jeff,
monsters, not
I
the
mean,
whole audience.
Jeff,
I mean, maybe
it
it's just
was
me,
a-
but
it was a TV
but if I go
series.
to a movie that's called The Terror, I'm not going to be terribly surprised if there's giant mutant polar bears in it.
No,
Yeah, I
no,
guess
Jeff,
so.
there was a TV series.
I don't go
It's
to a
2
movie
seasons.
called The Terror
It was a
and
TV
expect
series?
historical
Okay,
accuracy.
that's fine. Yeah.
But so
But
I did hear that
the-
that criticism being given that they added giant mutant polar bears, and that was kind of sad because they already had they already had enough to deal with, and then there was the real historically accurate problems that they were dealing with at the time, and then
Yeah,
they went.
it wasn't just like normal polar bears. It was like mutant ones.
Oh,
I mean,
I don't know.
I'll just say that there's room for all kinds of movies. I cannot speak to the one you're talking about, The General, because I have not seen it, but
But there's all kinds of movies.
there's all kinds
You're
of
right.
movies.
Yeah.
I'm not getting
Movies
mad.
don't have to all be
Yeah,
the
I'm-
same thing.
I'm not gonna get mad at this one because it had a giant monster and deep ones in it as compared to just being an earthquake, because that's not kind of movie it was going to be. It was about earthquakes and just survival and whatnot. But that's just me. I have long ago come to grips with the idea that not everything is made just for me,
True.
as proven
And-
by the fact that I've had to watch The Burbs and Doctor Strangelove on this podcast.
but you got to watch
Yeah.
this one, and this one wasn't bad, right? This wasn't bad.
Yeah, that was good. That was all right.
You weren't
trying to-
regretting it afterwards.
No, I'm still trying to find a movie
That you like and
or-
Jeff hates, right? Is that the the magic?
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, for a long time we've talked about the mythical movie that I like that Jeff doesn't, but now that I think about it, the really hard one is going to be one that I like and you, Gary, do not, because me and you have very similar taste in bad movies.
You and
Oh,
Gary? Yeah.
Oh, and occasionally I really want a movie that's not good for me. that I will watch and I know is not good for me. And I'm just like, I just want to watch this bad movie. A bad movie. A genuinely bad movie.
There are a couple of movies I'm going to make us watch this year, and I will go into reasons why then. But yeah, they are, well, I would argue one good movie, and then one okayish movie, and one bad movie that I enjoy despite the fact that it's bad. But
I actually think it's good for people to watch a terrible movie once in a while.
we'll see. We'll see how you feel about that once I make you watch this movie in a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have plans.
BJ has plans.
I have plans.
Because sometimes you got to watch a bad movie to remember what all the good movies are actually like. You know, you're like, oh, well, that was a bad movie. Now I'm glad. I watched recently. I watched Aquaman, the second one. That was a stupid movie.
I don't know if that was just some like weird trick to the microphone, but all of a sudden Gary started to talk like twice his normal speed. Did you hear that too, Jeff, or was it just on my end somehow?
I've got the new microphone.
It did seem a little strange.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Gary might be a robot. That's true.
I've got the new microphone.
I need to change the subject. I need to change it now. We're not going to have Aquaman.
No, I talked about, or I went and saw Aquaman, and that was a dumb movie. And I told my wife,
that to yourself?
That's a dumb movie. Don't go watch it. And she went and watched it because she wanted to see it. Because apparently Jason Momoa really appeals to middle-aged women, right? And that's the audience that they were going for. And
this is the last we're going to hear from Gary because he just called his wife middle-aged.
No. We're not going to connect those.
Please don't kill Gary. We need him for the podcast.
40 years old is by definition middle-aged. She will have to accept that at some point sooner
she
than
knew
later.
Gary Slytherin side is showing.
She knew what was happening. So
anyway,
you're right though, BJ. I will be hearing about that. She will be very angry about that at some point sooner than later.
Gary might be replaced with a robot for sure this time.
Well, no, yeah, she's been on the podcast before. She knows that if she kills me,
we are joined by.
If she kills me, she has to take my place on the podcast.
Gary.
Yes.
Yeah, that might be.
Gary becomes the $6 million man.
$6 million podcasting man.
Aren't they making that movie? I heard something like that. They're making the $6 billion man or something like that.
I don't know. It's an old TV
billion
show,
because it's inflation, but anyways.
That's how they make it modern. They just add another zero.
3 zeros and suddenly it's modern.
Designed it for a new generation.
Anyway.
$6 billion man. Anyways, yeah, no, kind of weird. I just liked this movie, so I wanted you guys to watch, and I liked it. So that's kind of my take on it.
But you liked it because it's a good monster movie. It has one of your favorite styles of monsters, which is a underwater Cthulhu creature.
It's also terrifying to me because of the combination of being underwater, it being dark, and it being excessively claustrophobic, right?
Yeah, I was about to ask, are either you very claustrophobic?
Oh,
I honestly don't know if I am or not, because I don't think I've ever really been in a situation where I got put to the test.
I have been, I am.
Okay. Then yes, I can see how this movie would push that button.
I'm terrified of underwater things. I'm terrified of being stuck inside small enclosed spaces. I'm terrified. This movie checks all of the Gary being scared boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff, I guess we're gonna have to cancel Gary's cave diving thing. We're gonna give him on his birthday. So we'll have to think of something else.
No, I thought we were just doing a game night, which I'd be completely for, by the way. So
well, I mean, I guess we are now, because I guess cave diving's out the window. But anyway, I think we already I think we already talked about cave diving and something, probably Jaws.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think we did talk about cave
that's
diving.
Nope all
Yeah, we
around
did.
for me.
So,
No cave
anyone
diving.
have anything else to say about Underwater, or should we wrap this turkey up?
I'm pretty wrapped on this one. It's I like the movie. I've talked about all the things I was going to talk about. Giant monster, underwater, scary. Yeah.
Monsters, water, claustrophobia. Check.
Check,
Jeff?
check, and check. Good hero.
I have a
good heroes throughout the movie. Yeah.
I have a mixture of between liking this movie a lot with some of its ideas and thinking its ideas are just kind of there. They're just more monster movies, more brown generic monsters.
It is not
Everything.
a perfect movie by any means, but
No.
It's not a perfect movie, but I think it's worth a watch.
I like
And it's pretty good.
I like the
in
tough
some
guy
ways.
dance. The tough guy dance that the two guys do right before they go out to investigate the thing. Doing the investigation when it's
Smith and Paul,
and they're about to go out. They do this weird little tough guy dance. I like that.
Getting ready to venture out into the strange ocean to rescue a bunch of survivors.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the one guy says, maybe something happened. Maybe we should bring a gun. And they both grab like a nail gun or something like that. Turns out it's useful. Anyways.
Yeah. I thought the lead character, she did pretty well. The girl from Twilight, I think.
yeah, I think like her and who plays Anakin in the prequels, Hayden Christensen.
Mm-hmm.
I think they kind of are in the zeitgeist as being not very good actors because of their
They just had
their
very
previous roles when they were
one-dimensional-
young. Yeah, so they kind of get, oh, they're bad actors, but no, they're both good
Oh.
actors. They just
Yeah, they do pretty well. And
When they
yeah,
get
that's something that every actor hates is being typecasted because the audience sees you in a certain way and they'll never unsee you again. Because every time you're in something new, their brains will go back to that one time that they saw you.
well,
And
it-
it's hard for them.
it's probably good for me because I never really watched the Twilight movies. Like I think I saw one once a long time ago, but I haven't really taken the time to go and watch them. So I don't really know her from those movies. The only time the main time I've ever seen her was in this movie, and I thought she was just perfectly fine in this role.
Yeah, I have neither seen or read Twilight because I knew that weren't my thing, so I inflicted upon myself.
Well, we just know that women actually do like vampires.
Sparkly vampires.
Sparkly ones. I mean, not always dark and grimacing. They like them to sparkle once in a while.
Maybe we should end the podcast before both y'all get in trouble with your wives.
Well, I don't think my wife likes sparkly vampires either. She likes vampires that are a little bit more.
Yeah, but your wife is already going to be mad at you. So that's
Yes, that is true.
Vampires or no, you are already in trouble.
I prefer the Count. That's really my kind of vampire.
The
You know,
Count.
a really good vampire who just likes to count. That's his motivation. That's it. Loves to count.
Oh, okay.
That is an excellent vampire.
All right. Final thoughts on this movie, though. Jeff?
Final
Five
thoughts.
times you've asked for final thoughts on this movie.
Jeff, final thoughts on this movie, though. What are your final thoughts?
Nothing good at this point.
Oh, but
I have final distractions, not final thoughts.
but you actually
So I will end it there.
actually had you did like this movie in general, right?
Sure.
In theory, in general.
Sure. I would probably want something more from the creatures, but I'm not even gonna say that's just me being weird and me. I monsters have been done. There's just monsters in every single show. There's lots of them. I just would think that it's good to experiment with something new, but this is not an experimental movie. This is a movie that was designed to be a good budgeted movie, lots of suspense, and to wow the audience and get them a little bit frightened once in a while, and then move on. Only hire, like 6 actors, generally, with a few others to play the computer voices or whatever. But yeah, I think this movie accomplished a very, very specific task within entertainment and within Hollywood.
It didn't because it flopped.
Did that.
But now everybody needs to go see that so that it won't flop in the long run.
It probably, it's just bad luck with COVID. It probably would have been okay-ish. It's certainly better than many other movies that people like. There's a lot of films, and I won't go through the long list because I know you guys will hate that, but there are movies that people generally like and think are okay, and I think this one's better than most of those other ones.
Okay.
So it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Getting back to I will say kind of getting back to the thing we were talking about earlier, I will say the podcast is family friendly, not necessarily all the movies we watch are family friendly. I don't know if this one is. It's rated PG-13. I would call it a hard PG-13.
Yeah, Paul's death. I'd say that one pretty much pushes it.
I think they do drop the F-bomb a few times.
Mm-hmm.
So hard PG-13, maybe soft R, so viewer discretion is advised.
Yes,
don't watch with the kids.
Don't take your kids to this one, people.
Too late.
It's like too late. Oh my kids.
They loved Cthulhu. They just loved it.
All right.
Okay, it's not really Cthulhu. I know. Okay.
Discount wish.com Cthulhu.
Okay, so like six times to call my final thoughts. Okay, so anything else anyone wants to say about Underwater?
No, that's pretty good.
Okay, well then we'll call it there. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff and Gary, and we'll see you next time. I just imploded that.
Good luck.